Good morning, Renee. It's great to be here to talk to you about Men's Health 2022.
And good to see you too, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. We're both, just for our audience, Renee and I are counsellors for AWS, and we're here to talk to you about men's health. Men's Health starts from June 13 to 19 of 2022, and this is a short 15-minute video just to impart our reflections on men's health, what it means, and how AWS can support men to improve their mental health. Renee, I'm curious, when you hear the term men's health and men's mental health week, what comes to mind to you?
Probably several things, Andrew. I guess firstly, the question of what is mental health and what is men's health and what is physical health. And for me, they're all kind of part of a continuum of remaining healthy. And healthy for me is having a happy, productive, satisfied sort of life. That doesn't mean you don't have worries or you're carefree, but essentially you feel that life is something you can manage. So when we talk about Health Week coming up, it's a kind of for me, a kind of a jog to men and to I guess community to say men's health is really important. We know there are struggles for men in various roles in their life, and sometimes men can find that difficult to access the sort of correct services or even to know who to go to talk to about certain things. So this is kind of Health Week kind of says to me, let's stop and think, all of us men, about are we feeling like we're leading the best life we can? And if we are worried about something, where can we look to get some support in our lives?
Excellent. And from an AWS perspective, how can men access our service?
Well, you know, the men in the audience we're talking to today is an audience of predominantly people whose organisations have a contract with Access Wellbeing Services to provide an employee assistance program. So there should be information in all the those organisations through HR departments, especially about how they can make contact with us. We provide a service via in-person contact, by phone, or as we're doing today through Teams, video, and all those means of contact are negotiable for people, particularly people in remote areas, for us to have a contact. We don't provide a long-term comprehensive service. It's a short-term service of 6 sessions, but it's a beginning place for guys who may be not so sure about what to do or who to talk to or whether they should be even concerned about issues in their lives, to make that preliminary contact, and we can work together on a short-term basis to look at maybe some of the solutions they might kind of want to explore in their lives and how they might go about that.
Just in general terms, Renee, what are some of the issues that guys present with you when they come to see you for counselling?
Look, you know, I think for guys, my experience is I'm seeing a larger number of guys coming in for contact with us. You know, there's always been thought of that counselling is something that women go to, but I'm actually seeing a greater number of men who are actually taking responsibility for themselves. But often their first contacts with us probably, in a sense, like I think most guys, they want to kind of test out the area. So sometimes they present because there are issues at work. They may not be getting on with people, or there's some work performance issues, or they're really stressed in their workplace and they feel like they're failing. And you know, sometimes they feel like there's a bit of an imposter syndrome going on, that they're in this particular position but they're not feeling particularly competent or confident what they're doing. Often they present because their partner has said to them, you need to go and get counselling. There's something wrong. And guys will turn up and often they'll know something's wrong, but they're not sure what it is, and particularly not how to kind of resolve some of the issues. Generally, there's a sense of something is not quite right in their life. and they don't even maybe have a sense of being connected to and in a way that helps them understand what that is. So for a lot of guys, it's kind of touching base for the first time to explore something, you know, that they've become aware of, and often through indirect means. It could be they're feeling stressed. It could be that maybe they're using alcohol or other substances more regularly or in a harmful way, or that they understand their mood has changed in quite a significant way that even they're worried about themselves. So there's a kind of a whole plethora um, of reasons that men are making contact in the first instance.
I think you raised some really good points there, Renee. I think just admitting and recognizing that things aren't right, as those host of examples you provided, is just a really good place to come and have a chat about things, and just to simply reflect on what is and how the council can talk about different ways to address these issues. There's plenty of ways. I know in the practice I engage with the male clients is to talk about self-care, simply acknowledging what's going on, and looking at different ways of problem solving. I think men engage best when they have a sense of being able to have some agency that they can do themselves to improve their mental health. And as you know, one of my favourite metaphors is to look at your self-care in terms of how much time you address to your self-care, both mentally and physically, in terms of exercise, having time out with friends, socialising, doing enjoyable activities. Often with work can be so consuming, and particularly with COVID, there has been an increase in men and also women being forced to isolate. So with the COVID restrictions coming off, I think it's important for men to use this Men's Health Week to reflect over the last couple of years have been really tough with COVID and all the impacts they've had, and to start reframing their mental health in terms of what we can now do with the restrictions being lifted. And I think that's a really important time to use Men's Health Week to look at that issue just on its own.
Exactly.
And, as you know, one of my favourite analogies is to look at mental health in terms of how much time we spend on ourselves, both physically and mentally, and compare it to how much time we spend doing other things, such as work, how much time we invest in our relationships, how much time we invest in spending time with our children. And I guess a simple way of looking at that is how much time, we look at the things we prize the most and compare that with what we spend in our mental health. For example, a lot of men will spend time on their cars or pet hobbies and things like that, which are a great way to de-stress and relax. But at the same time, we need to invest in our primary relationships. And I think the counselling space is a really good way for men just to reflect on how they're going with their partner, with their wife, with their children. Often men think you've got to come to counselling, there's something wrong. I would certainly like to use this opportunity to encourage men to come to counselling when things are going well, just for a checkup. It's a bit like when you take your car in to see a mechanic. There might be some issues there that the mechanic pointed out that you're unaware of. You had a bit of an inkling things aren't quite right. You've got a funny feeling, but you're not really sure what's going on.
Yeah.
I think the counselling space can provide a really safe place for men to explore issues that maybe they're not sure about how to approach, but the counsellor can help them articulate what's going on for them and suggest some really pragmatic solutions on how to address issues before they become major stresses in life.
Yeah, yeah, and we've been getting that message from the medical world for men for many years now, that your physical health is something that you actually have to do on a routine basis. You actually have to check in with your doctor for an annual kind of assessment and fitness check, if you like. That it's important to have your blood tests. It's important to be at certain times in your life kind of looking at particular issues that become relevant to you and your age medically and physically. And there's a kind of a very similar analogy for us in our personal and our emotional and psychological development, that various times in our life, depending on what's happening in our life, things will come up. And I think it's the point you're making is that there are a lot of normal stresses in our development as people, as human beings. And, and sometimes if we don't actually have a strong group of people around us, a strong group of mates, or females or people that we can check in with, sometimes, it's really helpful to check in with someone that's quite external to you, because I think men still find it generically difficult to kind of talk about some of the deeper issues that may be of concern, either from a health perspective or a relationship perspective. And it's I think your point of checking in is just a way, a great way of thinking about it, because it's not as though you're waiting for the car to break down. You're wanting to make sure the car doesn't break down, and sometimes reassurance from somebody, from your mechanic, to say, "Oh no, don't worry about that. It's just a regular noise, or that happens when the car gets a bit older. There's nothing to worry about." Has that kind of similar comparison to maybe checking in your own, for your own self-worth and your own kind of sense of satisfaction, just to hear that reassurance that you're doing okay. This is what normally happens around these kind of issues, or maybe fine-tuning it at that point and saying, doing really well, but you might even also want to improve on that by doing this. So it's one way of kind of, as you've talked about, of taking personal responsibility for your own health.
Mm. Totally agree with that. One of the things I find, and I enjoy working as a clinician with men, is building on what's already working in terms of creating better quality relationships with their partners and children, and actually having that intention. One of the challenges of modern day life is the rate of change is so quick, with changes in technology, with what's going on in the world. Our initial response can be one of anxiety and fear, which is quite normal. That we're just sort of hardwired that way. But I don't think the counselling space can help men identify that response and how to overcome it. Not to let the fear win, but also how to strategize and problem solve to have a better vision for themselves and their life. And I think I would invite men watching this video just to pause during this week of Mental Health Week to reflect on where you are in your life. What are the values you hold dear? What are the goals you want to achieve with your family? And how do you see yourself as a man? And
Mm.
what are the and to sort of take this time to engage in some goal setting and have some honest chats with the ones in your life that you value and love, and see how they see you and where you're heading with them in their lives. So I'd invite men to spend Mental Health Week as a time of self-reflection, to check in with their partner, and to maybe draw a list of goals and in future direction where you want to take yourself and your family. And for those men who are single, just to reflect on where you are in your life in terms of what personal goals you want to achieve. That could be through study or work, or through other goals that are important to you.
Mm. Yeah, I think the point you make, if I'm hearing you right, Andrew, is that counselling sometimes can be about dealing with specific issues, but it actually can be about building on your own successes and your what you've actually achieved in life, and having someone to reflect with in terms of the future and how you can actually build upon everything that's been happening to this point, and finding that direction and maintaining that direction, and having someone that's a bit of a coach on the sidelines, if you like, doing, yeah, that's great. How you're going to do that, and what you need to have in place to do that. And it's really about not so much telling people about their lives, but it's about encouraging them to find the directions they want to go in, and overcoming some of the maybe the small barriers that stand in their way, and to achieving the sort of success or happiness they actually want to.
Indeed. And I think that it gets back to intention. It gets back to what men want to do with their lives. I think men at their best usually very good at supporting, creating, building, adapting. These aren't just purely male qualities, but these are qualities I think men naturally gravitate towards problem solving and to finding solutions. So I think the counselling space is a really good way to reflect on men, how they're already doing that and how they can improve on their skill set. Often getting back to the car analogy, I think, often life can change and often we might have a certain way of dealing with things that may be akin to, say, an off-road strategy of our bush bashing, but when we come to the city or on the road, we've got to change our driving approach. And I think with counselling is a good way to reflect on those different strategies as life pressures changes, as children come along, kids grow up, changes in work. The rate of change is unprecedented. So I think it's a really good space for men to reflect on the strategies that worked in the past, see what ones are still good, and maybe adapt and change some other ones that may not, but were good originally, but with the changes in time and changes in society may no longer be as productive as they were previously.
Yeah, and I don't think we should underestimate the effect of change at the moment. I'm a man of a particular age, as you can see, and I've lived and worked for a very long time, but I haven't seen the sort of changes that are occurring currently, particularly through COVID, but even more organisationally. And I think the structure of organisations and the nature of work and the nature of management, I've in the last 5 to 10 years, adding COVID in, the rate of change in organisations, which is where or businesses or work, which is where men spend a large part of their life, has been incredibly rapid and complicated at times, and has placed a lot of pressure on individuals, and for those men who are in management, a lot of pressure on them. And sometimes with a sense of it's either you succeed or you exit, men having to spend much more time in their workplaces and the conflict that produces for them in terms of their other desires and obligations in life. And I think change is a really difficult thing to adapt to quickly. I think we adapt to change better when we do it over a slower kind of period of time, so we can think and reflect and do. But right now, there's not a lot of space for some of that. Sometimes it's really rapid, and I've certainly seen a lot of that impact on men with the men that have been visiting me and talking about their work situations.
And just one of the services AWS provide is training programs for businesses and companies to help their employees deal with change, how to improve their mental health, and also for managers to have support on how to deal with employees to help their performance. So I think it's great having this conversation with you, Renee. I think we've touched on a lot of issues. And was there anything you wanted to add before we finish up?
I always encourage both men and women to be courageous in their life, to know that it's okay to actually reach out to others, whether it be a counselling service, friends, or family. Be courageous when you know things are a bit tough, and talk about things. Burying them and not addressing them is not good for your mental health.
Indeed. All the research in mental health is that when you isolate and cut yourself off from support, your mental health usually drops pretty quick. And when you do the opposite, when you reach out to help and you talk to friends, engage in enjoyable behaviours, and take responsibility for where you're at, your mental health generally improves.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's been great chatting to you, Renee, and I just want to wish all the men watching this have a great Men's Health Week for 2022, and I hope this video has been some support for you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. See you,
Great
everybody.
chatting to you, Renee. Okay,
Bye.
cheers. Bye.